Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 30th of September 2021. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, just announced, actually, I think this was like 20 minutes ago, Visa just announced that they are building an Ethereum-based Layer 2 payment channel network. Now, there's this article from Decrypt that came out, and a few other kind of like media organizations covered this, like The Block and CoinDesk, but essentially what Visa is building here, there's a white paper for it and everything, but they're calling it a kind of like a universal payments channel. Basically, I think it's based on state channel technology from what I saw from the white paper. As I said, this came out 20 minutes ago, so I've just been trying to kind of like get across all of it so I could explain it to you guys on the refill today. But the reason why I say it's built on Ethereum or Ethereum-based is because at the end of the Decrypt article, you can see here that they say Visa, for instance, says the proposed base layer for its universal payments channel is Ethereum. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to work with other networks. I think from what I can see, what they're wanting to do is build an interoperable payments network so that it can obviously have Ethereum as the base layer. So it's like HQ, for example, it's like home base, and then have the other networks all kind of interoperate with it and connect to it and all that good stuff. So I think from that perspective, it makes perfect sense, right? I mean, Visa has been talking about this for a little while, wanting to kind of like create a, I guess, crypto-based payments network. Obviously, they already have their existing payment network that they call VisaNet internally, but that's, you know, running on the old rails, completely centralized, completely closed off. There's no openness to it at all. Whereas something like this, I guess, like the potential, maybe it doesn't end up like this, but the potential would be to have this completely interoperable payments network that maybe it's still permissioned, maybe it's still centralized, but have it between all these kind of like different merchants and tapping into the crypto rails. So all of these, I guess everyone that uses Visa and uses their existing VisaNet can tap into the crypto ecosystem. And this is kind of like, you know, some people will argue and be like, well, this isn't uninteresting because it's centralized, it goes against what we're trying to build with DeFi and blockchains and all this sort of stuff. But I've explained plenty of times on the refill before is that this is kind of how we get adoption. Like, I'm going to just be honest, and most of the world aren't going to be interacting with the, I guess, blockchain networks directly, with MetaMask, with, you know, other kind of wallets out there. They're not going to be going to the Uniswap front end and swapping tokens on there directly. They're going to be going through different intermediaries. And the real innovation, or I guess like the real revolution within crypto, is that yes, you can go through an intermediary, but you can also go and do it yourself. Whereas with the existing financial system, you can't do most things yourself. You have to go through an intermediary. There is no choice. So really, the revolution is the one of choice. And that's what I'm most excited about when it comes to crypto, is the fact that we now have a choice when it comes to our financial transactions. And it also, I mean, it's not just choice, it also brings a lot more transparency to the financial system. It allows a lot more people to kind of like be onboarded into it. It's going to just vastly improve, and it's permissionless as well. It allows for rapid iteration, rapid innovation at the kind of like financial level, which has not been possible traditionally in the past. So there's all that, but at the same time, that means that Visa can build like a totally centralized, permissioned payments network on top of this technology, and no one can stop them from doing so. But what's really cool is that if they're still using Ethereum as their home base, if they're still settling to Ethereum, if Ethereum is their settlement layer, then they're giving a lot of value to the Ethereum network, not only because they're going to have to pay fees in ETH, right? Even if it's a layer 2 network, they still have to pay fees in ETH to secure their layer 2 network if they want to tap into Ethereum security, which means ETH gets burned, which flows onto ETH. But also, I'm sure they're going to want to interoperate with all of the DeFi apps on Ethereum. They're not just going to want to sit in their own silo and basically be like, okay, well, our payment channel network can't actually interoperate with any of the DeFi apps out there, and we're just going to build a closed garden, and then, you know, we're going to hope it gets adoption. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to build this thing to be completely interoperable with different kind of like crypto networks out there, and also all the different DeFi apps and maybe even NFTs and stuff like that. So from that perspective, it's quite exciting. But I guess like one thing that I would temper expectations about is kind of like the timeline of when this is going to be coming out. Because the funny thing is with these sorts of things is that you can never really predict kind of like a timeline here, but you can always, I guess, like assume that it's going to take much longer than what you would think. They've said, I mean, Visa said that this is still in early stages. They've just kind of like announced this, they've put a white paper out, everything like that, and they've just unveiled it to the world. But this is probably going to take years to kind of like come into a, I guess, like production capacity. I think I saw a tweet where they've already got like a smart contract live on an Ethereum-based testnet, but that doesn't really mean much. It doesn't mean that Visa is going to deliver this thing in like a month, right? For example, I actually think it's going to take some years to do this, but it depends how far along they already are. Maybe they've already built a lot of it and they're just unveiling it now. But at the same time, for them to roll it out and for them to get adoption of it and for them to integrate it with all the different products is going to take a while. So I would expect to not hear about this again for a little while, to be honest. These announcements always kind of create a lot of fanfare. People get excited about it. Maybe the price of ETH goes up a little bit, which I think it is right now off the back of this announcement maybe, but not really anything to kind of like write home about. But, it's still kind of like cool to see more of the kind of like old world blending into the new world. Especially Visa, has been a big proponent of Ethereum. They bought a CryptoPunk, the other day. It was a few weeks ago now. And they've also kind of like, I think they teamed up with Crypto.com to settle USDC payments through their network and all those sorts of things. And they obviously have a crypto division kind of like working on all this sort of stuff. So exciting to see. And I think it's just like another step on, I guess, like crypto's journey to dominance. I think like it's not just Visa. All these other enterprise companies, all these other financial companies, they're going to be forced to use these networks for whatever they want to build because they're just much better than the existing infrastructure, which I personally get very excited about. And the Block also has an article on this if you want to go read it. The Crypt and Block both have articles and CoinDesk as well, I think, but they both have kind of like different sets of information on here. In the Block's article, it focuses on, I guess, like CBDCs and how Visa wants to target, CBDCs or central bank digital currencies with this sort of thing, which, again, like CBDCs is a whole nother topic that I'm not going to get into today. It is a bit controversial at times because people kind of wonder, well, what's a CBDC actually going to be? Is it going to be just like a tool for surveillance for the government and all that sort of stuff? So we're going to have to see how this evolves, but still cool to see more, I guess, layer 2 stuff being built on the Ethereum network especially. All right, so another big piece of news over the last 24 hours was that Justin Taylor, who is the head of consumer product marketing at Twitter, put out a video of a sneak peek on what they're working on with NFT profile verification. This is so cool. As you can see in the video here, you go to edit your profile, you select your profile picture, you select NFT, connect your wallet. Look at all the wallet options they have here. Coinbase, Argent, MetaMask, or like awesome amount of wallet options. You sign, with your wallet, then you have your NFTs displayed. You'll select the NFT that you kind of like want to display as your profile picture, and then it displays. But what's really cool is that it actually displays the logo of the network that this NFT is on. So you can see the little ETH logo on the profile picture here. Oh, like, I guess like a check mark. That's awesome. Obviously it's not just going to be Ethereum. If they integrate with other networks that have NFTs on them, they're going to have those logos there as well. But how awesome is it that Twitter is integrating this? Like, Twitter isn't just like a crypto thing. Twitter is an everything thing. Like, there's more to Twitter than crypto. But I think Twitter has played such a massive kind of like role in Twitter. They did the tipping with like Bitcoin, and I think they're adding Ethereum as well. And obviously they're doing this NFT stuff that it's just really cool to see them getting more involved here. But I don't know, I thought this was awesome. Like, that's just crazy. The fact that not only will you be able to kind of like set your NFT directly as your profile picture on Twitter, there's also going to be a check mark there to kind of like, I guess, show off to what network it's on. And I've always believed that an NFT on the Ethereum network actually has a premium to it. That might be because it costs more in gas to kind of like buy and sell NFTs on Ethereum, and it's kind of like more of a kind of like a premium thing. But again, like, there's going to be layer 2s that also have NFTs, and there already are, like Immutable X and stuff like that. So is that going to be an Ethereum checkmark for the layer 2s? Are they even going to allow layer 2 NFTs to be kind of like put as their profile, as your profile picture here? They probably will. But yeah, I thought this is just awesome, like seriously awesome, and I can't wait for this to come out because my current profile picture is actually an NFT, the Wazzy that I have. The old one, the Penguin, was also an NFT, but I can't wait to see like everyone else doing this. Like, a lot of people already on Twitter have NFTs as their profile picture. Even Justin Taylor here has a cool cat as his profile picture. So being able to kind of like have a verifiable link directly on Twitter with a little ETH check mark there is absolutely amazing. So really cool to see this. I'm looking forward to seeing this come out hopefully in the near future. All right, so a bit of a exploit in Compound land over the last 24 hours. So Compound Labs announced that they had unusual activity had been reported regarding the distribution of comp rewards. So essentially what this exploit was, and there's actually a great thread here from the NFT Billboard. If you want to check this out, it'll be linked in the YouTube description. But the TLDR of the exploit was that I think about a week ago, maybe, a new kind of like controller for the comp token or for like the comp rewards was put into the protocol, and I think it only went live over the last over the last 24 hours, and it had a bug in it, and the bug was literally in two places in the code where instead of a greater than and equal sign, they had like just a greater than sign. So if they had just put like the equals on it, then this bug wouldn't have existed. So you can see how sensitive these things are. But Compound itself is fine. Like the supplied borrowed funds aren't at risk. The bug that actually happened was that people were able to claim way more comp that they were entitled to. And I think one person claimed $27 million worth of comp and then sold some of it into the market. And there were other people claiming more comp than they should have. And the worst part about this is that there's a fix, but the fix won't be able to go in and be live on as part of Compound smart contracts until a week from today, because there's a time lock on Compound governance that they aren't able to implement something once it's passed until 7 days is once it's passed governance until 7 days has elapsed, which is funny because this is something that's been talked about a lot. And it's not haha funny. It's funny because of the fact that I've seen this, as I said, talked about a lot, where people were debating whether things should have time locks on it or not, because the time locks are a double-edged sword. Because on the one hand, it means that the team or governance can't do anything malicious without people realizing. So if something malicious happened with Compound and something passed Compound governance and some wacky code got in that would drain the entire Compound system, there will be a 7-day period where the community could react. People could withdraw their funds from Compound and save themselves from this happening. But on the other side of things, when an exploit like this happens, you also have to wait 7 days for a fix to be put in place. So that's been a big debate over whether time locks are a blessing or a curse. I think they're both. Like, it can go either way. And there are some ways that you can get around this, where you have like a veto over the time lock, where you can have like a supermajority. So say you need like a much larger percentage of the network, or at least the token holders, to come together to be able to override a certain change and things like that, and to override the time lock. But that also introduces kind of, I guess, like a tricky stuff into the mix as well, because what if, just a bunch of whales banded together and did this and were able to kind of like drain funds from a contract or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely a bit of a hard line there, but definitely read this Twitter thread by the NFT Billboard. It gives a great little breakdown with a bunch of links and kind of a timeline of what happened as well. So, because I woke up to this today and kind of like, I was just trying to piece it all together, and I was like, okay, is Compound safe? Like, are the supplied and borrowed funds safe? And yes, they are, but like the fact that anyone can mint way more, not anyone, but like a certain amount of people or the people that were kind of like supplying and borrowing funds from Compound could mint much more comp tokens that they would ever get, is really bad for the comp price. And the comp price, of course, dumped because you had these people minting tokens that they shouldn't be and then dumping it into the market. Who knows if they'll kind of return the funds or not. We'll have to wait and see if something happens there, but still really, really shitty for Compound here. And, as I said, the fix is in motion right now, but we're going to have to wait a week until the fix is live on the Compound network, or the Compound protocol, I should say. So yeah. All right, so Polynya has put out another kind of like post, this time on Reddit under their name Liberosist here. This one hits home again. Like I think I've spoken about Polynya on the Refuel like every day for the last week at least. But anyway, this is a post about modular versus monolithic sharding and ZK monolithic as well. So I'm not going to give you a TLDR because you're going to need to read the post. It's kind of like, it's not dense like as Polynya does. They have a really great way of kind of like translating complex technical stuff into basically ways that you and I can understand it. So definitely go give this post to read. But as I said, it focuses on kind of like sharding and how that plays into things, how shared security plays into things, how layer 2s play into it, data availability, all the buzzwords, I guess you can say, that I've been talking about a lot on the Refuel lately. I just wanted to highlight this and make sure that you all saw this. So definitely go check it out. It'll be linked in the YouTube description. And speaking of Polynya, da-bing.eth here has put together a kind of like table or two tables based on Polynya's writing, which basically splits these things up into kind of like, what's the type of blockchain? Is it monolithic? Is it a roll-up? Is it a validium? What is the execution? Like, where does it do the execution? Does it do it at chain 0, which is basically the base layer? Does it do it at chain 1, roll-ups, etc.? Where does it store its data? So where's the data availability? For rollups, they have the data availability at chain 0, for example, so the base layer or layer 1. Where does it derive its consensus and security from? Again, chain 0. An example is Arbitrum 1, of course, and then some notes here. So execution on Arbitrum 1, security and data availability by Ethereum. And then in this table, da-bing goes through basically the rest of the solutions here, and then there's a second table as well, which is like kind of I guess it's an extension of this one where it's got like multi-volition, volition like monolithic, security chain, zk monolithic, basically talking about the other posts that kind of like Polynya put together today on Reddit. So these tables are great. It's a really great mental model because in writing, like it's different than a table, right? Writing is more of a kind of like just blast you with information, and it can be structured, but it's definitely kind of like in bits and pieces throughout the piece, and you have to read it holistically. Whereas at the table, you can split each things up into different sections and easily get like a TLDR of the whole thing. So definitely go check these out as well. It'll be linked in the YouTube description. All right, so Lido announced that there's now more than 7.8 million ETH being staked, which is more than 6.6% of all circulating ETH. At current prices, that is $22.2 billion, which is a lot of dollars, right? So I wrote the Daily Gwei newsletter about this today, but two things I wanted to talk about with regards to, I guess, like not the number of ETH being staked, but just like staking in general. In the community right now, there's the discussion around client diversity, and I've been talking about it on the Refuel a lot lately. How Prism has kind of like Prism, one of the floor clients, has too much share of the network. I think around 64% share, and the other three have 36% share of the network, with Lighthouse at about 22%. So obviously, we would love to get Prism to be, just 50%. Like, I'm not saying we should get them, to like 33%. We should have like 25% across all clients. But getting Prism down to like way less than 66%, which is the danger threshold, is a really good idea. And on that note, Prism actually put together a blog post today on their view on client diversity and how to kind of approach this as a community. I think this is a great little piece. I suggest going to and reading it, because the discussion around client diversity shouldn't be framed in such a way where we're demonizing any one client for being the majority. It is not Prysmatic Labs' fault that Prism became the majority client. They didn't go out of their way to say, hey, you should use Prism and you shouldn't use any other client because we're the best, blah, blah, blah. What happened was that the Prism client is really, really good, but and also they have a really simple onboarding process, and they're the most well-known ETH2 team. At least they were at the time, especially when people were kind of like staking earlier on in kind of like the first few months of staking going live. And they also had a Windows native or native Windows implementation of Prism as well, which the other clients I don't believe did at the time. They do now, but they didn't earlier on in kind of like the staking life cycle. So from that point of view, that's exactly why Prism has gotten so much market share. But the Prylabs team does not want to be the majority. They don't want to be the reason that the network is in an unhealthy state. And they describe that in this blog post here, where they basically say, we shouldn't demonize any client for being like the majority or being a large part of the network. But what we should do is we should collectively encourage people to respect client diversity and to understand that client diversity is very important for network health, and we should leave it up to the users to make their own decision on what clients they want to use. But also, I guess, like, make sure that they understand that they should use, if there's one client that has way too much of the network share, they should use a minority one from there as well. And it's funny because I think getting existing stakers to change is going to be more of a challenge than getting new stakers to just use a different client. And there's various ways you can do that, and there's various initiatives going on right now. You're going to see more about this going into October as well, I believe. And with Rocket Pool going live as well, it's definitely going to be a bit better there. So that's kind of like one thing when it comes to staking that I'm going to be talking about a lot more going forward, and I spoke about in the newsletter today. The second thing is around stake distribution. So What I mean by this is the amount of stake kind of like concentrated into, I mean, not just concentrated, but like where is the ETH being staked from? And if you look at the stats today, and this is again an approximation, this isn't actually an exact number. We won't ever actually know the exact number of like how much ETH is being staked on centralized exchanges versus how much ETH is being staked by, just individuals like you or me. But with the approximations that we have, we can see that the current top single staker is actually Lido. They have 11.8% of the total ETH staked, of that 7.8 million ETH staked here. But that doesn't mean that it's concentrated all within, I guess, like Lido as a single service provider. What Lido does is they distribute the stake amongst different staking service providers. I think 9 or 10 of them. So from that perspective, they aren't a single entity that has all the stake. It's just spread out. But they do have a derivative token, STETH, which adds additional kind of like risks and stuff there as well, and additional trust assumptions. But, I guess when looking at the distribution of stake, looking at Lido as like a single entity is missing kind of like the forest for the trees, because it distributes its stake out. But in saying that, in the current, I guess like form of Lido, in the current kind of like instance of Lido, it is centralized still. So probably not a bad thing to look at it as kind of like a central entity, just for, I guess, like approximation perspectives, but you have to dig deeper sometimes as well. But then if you want to look at something and say, okay, well, this is a single entity that has a lot of stake, you look at something like Kraken. Kraken has 11.6% of the total ETH staked. They're just one exchange. So, and they control all their validators as a centralized exchange. And the thing is, they're so far ahead of third place. Third place is Binance at 3.8%. So that's fine. But they're really far ahead. So obviously, Kraken, the funny thing is about Kraken is that they were the first ones, or the first exchange to list ETH back in 2015 when the Ethereum network went live. They have a massive ETH stash, and they also have a lot of long-term, I think, ETH people that use Kraken. Even the Ethereum Foundation uses Kraken when they sell off ETH or want to do anything with their ETH. So from that perspective, it's not really a surprise that Kraken's leading. But as I said, then you have Binance at 3.8%, and then you have a bunch of other providers underneath it. I think the or the other section, the non-centralized exchange, centralized staking service provider is ETH is at 60%. So 60% of the staked ETH hasn't been identified as belonging to a centralized exchange or a staking service provider. But in saying that, the charts that I've looked at haven't identified Coinbase's staking, and we don't know how much ETH is being staked with Coinbase. I would say it's probably about 1 million ETH, so that's actually probably a large chunk of the ETH being staked. Maybe it's not that much, but Coinbase definitely is going to have a lot of ETH being staked. So I would say that we could probably safely say that 50% of the or maybe 40 to 50% of the ETH being staked belongs to individuals and solo stakers and people just doing their own operations, whether that be in data centers or on their own hardware. And then the remainder is in exchanges, staking service providers, and all that sort of stuff there. I don't think that that's a big deal. And I actually have a blog, a Daily Gwei newsletter piece about this, which is linked in today's newsletter, so you can go check that out, where I argue that centralized exchange staking is not a critical threat unless it's like takes over the majority of the network, which is like 66%, and unless it's kind of like a handful for a number of different reasons. I describe it in the post, so you can go check that out. I'm not going to go through it today, but yeah, those are the two major things that I just wanted to kind of highlight on the refuel today. And then in the newsletter, I also go into like the merge and how that's coming up, and Altair coming up on October 27th and stuff like that. But I went over that on the refuel yesterday, so I won't rehash that for today. Moving on. So DEX aggregator 1inch has blocked US traders in preparation for a separate American platform. So, I mean, this is just another, I guess, like app in the long, I mean, maybe not not long string of apps yet, but it's going to be the long string of apps that geofence US IP addresses from being able to access their official front ends. We saw Uniswap do some censorship, Uniswap Labs do some censorship on their centralized front end. We've seen, I think, Loopring do it for China users. And now we've seen DYDX do it for US users, and now we're seeing 1inch do it for US users as well. And 1inch has actually gone a step further, where it actually requires you to sign a transaction when you connect to 1inch, saying that you don't live in the US or some other jurisdictions, which is a bit bizarre. But I guess the thing is, 1inch's contracts are kind of unaffected by this. You can still use them through kind of like third-party apps or directly, interacting with the contracts yourself. But the way 1inch works is that it actually hasn't, from my understanding, it has an off-chain kind of thing where they basically have their own algorithm that does the matching on a centralized server, and that can be restricted. So, if you're a US user, you won't be able to use that because you can only use it through the official 1inch app. Now, of course, you can get around this very easily by using a VPN, and I don't think the kind of like the 1inch team is going to be monitoring the VPNs. They even encourage people to use VPNs in the messages that they display to users. So there's that as well. But this is kind of like a debate that we're going to have as a community going forward, and it's going to be ongoing. And I mean, the debate's already been started around kind of like, and I spoke about this in my newsletter on the Refuel, about having to decentralize all this sort of stuff as fast as possible. Because as I've said, the regulators are going to go. I mean, not that a regulator went after 1inch here. Maybe they did behind closed doors, but I think this is more of a kind of, I guess like proactive measure or like defensive measure. But the regulators are always going to go after the lowest hanging fruit. And I've said before that includes centralized exchanges, centralized stablecoins, and centralized front ends for the different DeFi apps out there. And also centralized teams that have admin keys that are very, that could be kind of like coerced into doing something on the app to do whatever, essentially, right? It doesn't have to be kind of like blocking users, but it can be certain other things out there. So I think more and more people are kind of like cluing into this now. There's going to be more and more solutions coming online for decentralizing out the front ends, and I'm looking forward to seeing that happen. So yeah. Clinton Bembry Jr. from Slingshot put out an interesting tweet today where he said, username plus password equals bad, connect wallet equals good. And this is a very simple explanation of basically saying, we want to get rid of username and passwords as authentication devices in place of a public-private key pair, which is an Ethereum wallet, for example. Like I've talked about signing with Ethereum before on the Refuel, plenty of times, and I've talked about the merits of it before and why it's actually more secure. But I mean, this is just like a very simple way of putting it, right? Like, we all know that there's been it's funny, over the years and decades, username and passwords has kind of been like a cat and mouse game between, I guess, like ease of use for the end user and security. Obviously, a lot of users reuse the same password. They set insecure passwords. Then password managers came along and people were able to kind of like have a master password with two-factor authentication. For all their different accounts out there, and they're able to store it on there and all that sort of stuff. And then now we've come along with Connect Wallet or sign in with Ethereum, where essentially you have like your MetaMask or your Ledger, whatever Ethereum wallet that you use, and you're able to just sign a message and connect to a website, and then it authenticates you through that. So through like a Web3 authentication flow, which is obviously the better model. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing this kind of like make waves here. And I know that I've mentioned before that ENS has teamed up with Spruce to build a full kind of like sign-in with Ethereum flow to make this a reality. I'm looking forward to seeing kind of like what shakes out of that, and I'll keep you guys updated on that too. All right, the final thing to talk about here is just a note that end of an era, GasNow, which is a very popular website for, I guess, kind of like gas-related metrics and tracking gas prices and things like that, has announced that they're shutting down, ending all services on the 15th of October 2021. That's unfortunate. I mean, I used to use GasNow all the time. I have since switched to Blocknative's gas extension, which is an amazing little extension that basically, I mean, I've gone through it on the Refuel before, but it basically allows you to kind of like see up here that gas estimator you can see on the Chrome store here by Blocknative. Basically, where's the screenshot? Here you go. Basically shows you kind of like the priority fee, the max fee, the base fee, and it gives you a bunch more information about gas prices and things like that. So definitely go check this out if you're looking for a replacement for GasNow. And they also have a website too. The website is I can't remember the exact name. Sorry, the exact URL for the website. But if you go to blocknative.com, I think you'll be able to find their kind of like gas estimator on here somewhere. Products, yeah, gas estimator. So it's blocknative.com. I think it would be /gas.estimator. See, this website here is basically what the extension does. It packages up this little kind of like graphic here, puts it there, and you'll be able to kind of get really, really good estimations of gas prices and what you should set your priority fee and max fee to if you want to get into like the next block at a near certainty as well. So, and there's also a bunch of other metrics and tools on here that you can use those too, so definitely go check those out. But on that note, I think I'm going to end it there for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.